For nearly 2 millennia, they have been silent witnesses. The victims of Mount Vesuvius, frozen in their final moments, their bodies entombed in volcanic ash. They are history's most haunting memorial. Three-dimensional snapshots of the city erased in a single day. We thought we knew their story, a story of tragic, sudden death, preserved for the ages. But we were wrong. Over the past decade, a quiet revolution has unfolded. Archaeologists, geneticists, and computer scientists have combined CT scanning, DNA analysis, and machine learning to peer inside these ancient remains. Together, these technologies began revealing patterns human eyes had missed for generations. What researchers found inside these 2,000-year-old bodies didn't just add to the story, it fundamentally rewrote it. The discoveries have forced experts to confront uncomfortable truths about life and death in ancient Pompeii. August 24th, 79 AD. Mount Vesuvius unleashed devastation upon the Roman city of Pompeii and its neighboring towns. Within hours, pyroclastic surges, superheated avalanches of gas, ash, and rock tore through the streets at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. The city and its people were buried. But the very material that killed them also preserved them. The ash hardened around the deceased, forming perfect molds of their bodies. For centuries, these hollow cavities in the earth were all that remained. Then, in 1863, archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli devised a brilliant technique. By pouring liquid plaster into these voids, he created startlingly detailed casts of the victims. For the first time, the world could see them. Families huddled together, individuals shielding their faces, figures locked in final embraces. For generations, these casts were the definitive story, but they were also a barrier. The plaster that gave them form concealed everything within: the actual bones, the teeth, the skeletal. Evidence, all of it, was locked away. Breaking them open was unthinkable. It would destroy the very artifacts researchers sought to understand. So the secrets of their bones remained hidden. In the early 2000s, a new hope emerged: CT scanning. The technology that lets doctors peer inside living patients was aimed at Pompeii's dead. But early results were frustrating. Bone and plaster share similar densities, producing unclear, difficult-to-interpret images. A ribcage could be mistaken for a plaster ridge. A jawline would fade into hardened ash. Much of the data seemed unusable. That began to change as imaging technology improved, and researchers developed new analytical methods. By the 2010s, multi-slice CT scanners with higher resolution were producing clearer results. Scientists developed protocols specifically designed for archaeological specimens, adjusting contrast and imaging parameters to better differentiate bone from plaster. Then came machine learning. Algorithms originally trained on thousands of modern medical scans had learned the subtle signatures of the human skeleton. They could recognize bone density patterns, identify faint anatomical structures, and distinguish biological material from surrounding stone. When applied to the Pompeii data, these tools helped researchers extract information that had been hiding in plain sight. The combination of improved scanning, specialized techniques, and computational analysis transformed what researchers could learn. As one archaeological director described it, scientists were finally able to open a time capsule within a time capsule. And the first major discovery to capture public attention was one few expected. When enhanced images of the victims' teeth first emerged, researchers were struck by what they saw. The dental structures looked remarkably healthy, far better than many modern populations. Initial skepticism gave way to confirmation, as scan after scan showed the same pattern. The conclusion became inescapable: the people of ancient Pompeii had surprisingly excellent dental health. This challenged conventional assumptions. Ancient populations, without modern dentistry or fluoridated water, were expected to show rampant decay and significant tooth loss. Yet the scans revealed minimal cavities and relatively little wear, even in middle-aged individuals. How was this possible? The answer lay in their environment and diet. The volcanic soil around Vesuvius was rich in fluorine. Crops grown in the region absorbed it, and local water was naturally fluoridated as it filtered through volcanic rock. Their diet was another crucial factor. Pompeians consumed whole grains, fish, olive oil, and fresh produce, the classic Mediterranean diet with virtually no refined sugar, which wouldn't become widely available for centuries. This combination created unexpectedly favorable conditions for dental health. But this discovery carried a sobering implication. These weren't frail, sickly people weakened by poor health. They were strong and vital, a fact that makes understanding their final moments all the more important. The dental findings were just the beginning. As researchers continued their analysis, they began correcting stories that had been told for over a century. The most significant revision came from one of Pompeii's most iconic casts, two figures locked in what appears to be a final, desperate embrace. For decades, tour guides called them the Two Maidens, and their presumed story of sisterly or mother-daughter love moved millions of visitors. Except they weren't women. In 2017, a study combining CT analysis with DNA testing delivered a surprising verdict. The skeletal structure showed distinctly male characteristics. Pelvic bone measurements, skull features, and bone density all pointed to male anatomy. DNA analysis confirmed it. The two maidens were, in fact, two men. Their embrace could have been that of a father and son, brothers, friends, or lovers. We cannot know for certain. But the story visitors had been told for decades was based on assumption, not evidence. This pattern of correction repeated itself. Figures identified based on posture or location were revealed to have different ages or sexes than assumed. The data didn't conform to romantic narratives. It simply reported what the bones revealed. The analysis also complicated assumptions about social class. Victims found in modest quarters sometimes showed skeletal markers of good childhood nutrition, while remains discovered in wealthy villas occasionally showed signs of physical labor and dietary stress. The findings demonstrated that where someone died did not necessarily reflect how they had lived. But perhaps the most significant revelations concerned how these people actually died. This is where the research became genuinely disturbing. For decades, the accepted narrative of Pompeii was almost gentle. Its residents, caught off guard, died relatively peaceful deaths suffocated as ash slowly accumulated, their serene poses preserved for eternity. The plaster casts, with their seemingly peaceful expressions, reinforced this comforting interpretation. Modern analysis has dismantled that narrative. Research published in recent years, including groundbreaking studies from the nearby site of Herculaneum, has revealed that many victims died violently and traumatically. The pyroclastic surge was not gentle snowfall. It was a physical assault, superheated gas and volcanic debris striking with tremendous force. Skeletal analysis has documented catastrophic damage, skull fractures, spinal injuries, and bones broken by extreme thermal shock and pressure injuries inconsistent with simple suffocation. Some victims show evidence of being struck by volcanic projectiles traveling at high velocity. Death in these cases would have been nearly instantaneous. Researchers have also documented the pugilistic posture, limbs drawn up, fists seemingly clenched. This occurs when extreme heat causes muscles to contract. In 2020, a study of victims at Herculaneum found evidence of brain tissue that had vitrified, essentially turned to glass, indicating exposure to temperatures potentially exceeding 500 degrees Celsius. Such findings suggest that for some victims, the heat was so intense that death came with terrifying speed. Skeletal evidence has allowed researchers to reconstruct final moments with uncomfortable clarity. Defensive postures, injuries suggesting attempts to shield faces and bodies, evidence that some individuals may have survived initial surges only to succumb to subsequent waves of destruction. These were not people peacefully preserved. They experienced one of history's most violent natural disasters. The serene appearance of the casts was an illusion created by the casting process itself. The reality, now documented through rigorous scientific analysis, is far more harrowing. The Pompeii research represents a broader shift in how we study the ancient past. Advanced imaging, genetic analysis, and computational tools are revealing truths unfiltered by assumption or wishful thinking. These technologies don't tell us the stories we want to hear. They show us what the evidence supports, even when the conclusions are uncomfortable. This methodological revolution is spreading across archaeology. Researchers are applying similar techniques to Egyptian mummies, diagnosing diseases that afflicted pharaohs thousands of years ago. Studies of preserved remains from northern European bogs have revealed tattoos and physical details invisible to the naked eye. Digital reconstructions can now be shared globally, allowing scientists across continents to collaborate on the same specimens simultaneously. But this expanding knowledge forces us to confront difficult questions. For generations, the victims of Vesuvius have been displayed as museum exhibits. Millions of people have gazed at their final moments, often treating them as curiosities rather than casualties. Now that we better understand the violence of their deaths, does that change our responsibility to them? Are they historical artifacts to be studied and displayed, or are they human beings deserving of dignity we have perhaps not fully extended? The headlines about perfect ancient teeth, while fascinating, risk obscuring the larger tragedy. These were healthy, vital people whose lives ended in terror. Science reveals the evidence, but we must decide how to interpret and honor what we learned. These technologies have functioned as a kind of time travel. They cannot transport us back to 79 AD, but they have reached through 2 millennia of silence, allowing us to read messages written in bone, ash, and enamel. For nearly 160 years, we looked at these casts and believed we understood. We projected our assumptions onto their frozen forms, crafting narratives that comforted us. Now, layer by layer, the evidence is teaching us to see them differently, not as symbols or curiosities, but as individuals whose final hours were marked by unimaginable violence. The plaster casts will remain. They are irreplaceable artifacts of an irreplaceable moment, but our understanding of what lies within them and what their existence truly represents has been permanently transformed. We thought we knew them. We are only now beginning to understand.